Hallo, Spio here. Today I'm going to give you a quick overview of Tribute, the Wavetable synthesizer I've been building over the course of the last year. So to the top left, you can choose from a variety of different patches that Tribute comes with. It's the patch browser, you can obviously also save and load your own patches. But Tribute comes with a bunch of bass patches like this one. There are also effects, leads, pads, plugs and polyphonic patches, as well as a handful of combinators. Moving on, we have the pitch and mod wheel, as well as the pitch bend range. And to the right, we have global options, gain, monophonic and glide. In the center, there are the two oscillators. At the top, we have amplitude-related settings, to the left, pitch-related settings, and to the right, unison settings. So each of Tribute's two oscillators comes with 8 voices that can be used in unison. In the center, there's the Wavetable display, where we can choose the oscillator that we currently want to edit using these 1 and 2 buttons. We can disable and enable oscillators, and we can choose the wavetable that the oscillator is using, either by making use of the sample browse group or by pulling in a sample directly from the browser. So in theory, any .wav audio file can be a wavetable for Tribute, but Tribute also comes with 50 wavetables preloaded. And if you have trouble finding these, they are under rec extensions, Tribute, Wavetable Synthesizer, Wavetables. So these wavetables were predominantly made with bass music in mind, but you can obviously use those in any context. And I actually made these wavetables using Tribute itself. So there's this emitter feature, which lets you create new wavetables from a Tribute patch. This is quite a complex feature and I'm going to make a separate video on it, but for now, suffice it to say, if I press this button, a wavetable comes out. You can use this gray X right here to clear the wavetable and reset the oscillator to its initial wavetable, which is a simple sine to saw sweep. It should be noted that these wavetables are entirely compatible with other wavetable synths like Europa and Expanse, and you can also load up Serum wavetables in Tribute, so there's a lot of compatibility there. To the bottom, we have the wavetable modulation options. So the button all the way to the left is Squarify, which simply eliminates all of the even harmonics in the wavetable. Which is a nice way to get a different timbre very quickly. Then there's the wave knob, which is your run-of-the-mill scrolling through the wavetable knob. But then there are some interesting knobs, outer, inner position and ratio, and these control the unique wavetable modulation algorithm that Tribute is built around. So I've come up with this algorithm actually quite a while ago, and I've used it to create wavetables for other wavetable synths, but I really wanted to have a real-time and very playful package for this algorithm, and that's pretty much what Tribute is. So what this algorithm lets you do is it lets you squeeze and stretch the wavetable in certain places. So just watch and listen to what happens if I bring up this inner knob. So as you can see, I can squeeze the wavetable to have it center around a position that I can choose using the position knob. And outer actually just does the opposite of inner. It stretches the wavetable apart, starting at the position I choose right here. So using these 3 knobs, I have a lot of control over the wavetable. I can push and pull it around, and I can get some very articulate and expressive sounds. And this is really where the power of Tribute lies. The ratio knob, to illustrate what it does, I'll just quickly reset this wavetable right here and bring it up to 2/1. And as you can see, we now have 2 cycles of the sine wave in our wavetable. And we can now modulate these 2 cycles together using our wavetable modulation algorithm. You probably don't want 32 sine cycles to modulate, but it could also lead to some cool sounds. A more a probable use case for this is probably if you just want a little bit more craziness in your already pretty busy wavetable. You can bring up the ratio to something like 4/1 and then start dialing in your modulation. So you can go pretty crazy with these on its extreme setting. Another thing is the smooth knob button right here. And to illustrate what that does, once again, I'm going to switch back to a sine wave. And if I press this, now we can also access non-harmonic ratios. Especially if you're automating the ratio knob very quickly, setting the smooth button to on is probably a good idea. Because it's just a little less jumpy, because there's no quantization to even harmonics. To harmonics. And now you can get non-harmonic ratios as well. Well, you probably don't want that extreme modulation on the ratio unless you're going for a very brutal sound. Moving on, to the bottom we have our mod matrix. Here you can choose one of the many modulation sources, like envelopes, and you can route them to targets, like the oscillator one's outer. Let's just quickly reset these settings. And I'll bring this up to 80. You can also scale these modulations by another modulation source, for example, the mod wheel. And this behaves very much like you're used to from Thor or Europa. You can also invert the scaling. Moving on, we have our envelopes to the bottom left. Here you can change the shape of the envelope using the hold, attack and decay ratio and the curve controls, as well as you can control the tempo right here with the tempo field, which you can also have as seconds or sync it to the song's BPM. So let's set it to a quarter note and play around with these settings. So envelopes on tribute are attack decay envelopes. To set up a sustain and release behavior, you need the mods, but we'll go over that in a second. So these are really designed to be as simple and quick to operate as possible and still offer a bunch of different shapes. So using the attack decay ratio, we can move this top part of the envelope from left to right. And using hold, we can extend the width of the top part. We have curve controls for attack and decay. So a negative curve will push the attack down and make it come up really quickly. A positive curve will do the opposite. You have the same curve behavior on the decay as well. And you can also switch these curves to S curves. Now if I bring this up positively, we get this very interesting kind of halfway point. And if there are negative values right here, we get a very smooth kind of S-curve. To the top right of the envelope display, we have this little arrow where we can load up presets for envelopes, like the sine preset, which makes use of S-curves to simulate a sine wave. The best way to control a lot of these parameters at once is by using gestures on the display itself. So if I simply left click and drag the mouse, I can control both of the curve values as well as the attack and decay ratio. If I hold down the Alt key, I can control once again the AD ratio to left and right and the hold when I move upwards and downwards. Alright, we have 6 of these envelopes in total, but we also have 4 mods. So down here in the mod display, in the mods tab, we can set up mods. So mods are quite special in Tribute. The basic idea is we can chain envelopes together down here by adding them as elements. If I load a sine for envelope 2 and a ramp up for envelope 3, and if I just simply reset envelope 1 by control clicking on the display, and I'll bring the speed to a quarter note, you can see here we have a quarter note of these exponential decay. then an 1/8 note of a sine, and another 1/8 note of a ramp up, and they are chained together here using this mod display. An interesting element down here is the L element for loop. So this loop element is set up to loop indefinitely over one following element. I can bring this up to 3, and now we have kind of an LFO with a very funky shape. Let's assign this to the oscillator's inner and take a listen. We can also do some funky stuff like a loop over 2 and 3 inside of the indefinite loop. So I'll bring this up to looping over the next 2 elements, and I'll bring up the count to like 4 times. So as you can see, we have some options here to quickly set up patterns which are quite complicated. We can enable global right here to make this mod run independent of node input, and bipolar will just make it so it's modulating to the left and to the right, and not just to the right, to the upper direction. We can also just scale up the time to make it run faster. So there are a bunch of options here, and once again we have this little arrow to load up some common settings like LFO settings that simply, loop over one envelope indefinitely. One interesting way of looping over envelopes is by using this S mode. S stands for sustain, and now this gives us the option to model an ADSR envelope. So if I bring up hold all the way here on envelope 1 and switch on envelope 1, now this will sustain a value of 1 as long as a note is held down. Now if I bring an envelope 2 up here and have like it only attacking, and envelope 3 I'll have only decaying, and put that beyond here, now we have kind of a fake ADSR envelope. And I'll switch that from global once again to node input, because we want this ADSR to react to notes. And obviously you can't hear any release because we have the release at 0. So let's bring it up. So this is a way we can emulate ADSR, but I really wanted to break the mold a little bit here and have a synth without an explicit ADSR envelope. Alright, that's it for mods. Let's move on to macros, which are not nearly as complicated. These are simple macro knobs which you can assign to targets right here. For example, if I bring this to the pitch, I get a new row in our matrix, and I can set the amount right here. I can give this macro a name, pitch, and I can also clear it right here, and it will clear the row from the matrix that it was previously assigned to. So the matrix is kind of dynamic. You can add as many rows as you want. There is a limit of 25 right now, which I have not hit, but if there is more rows needed, I will make this counter bigger. For now, for performance reasons, I've kept it at 25. So you get the scroll bar as soon as you hit the maximum amount of rows that you can display right here. Pro tip, if you use Alt and drag right on the matrix, you don't need to use the scroll bar, which can be a bit tricky. So just hit Alt and scroll with your left mouse button, and you have a much nicer time scrolling. Anyway, and always if you hold down Shift, you can be more accurate in your settings. Okay, last but not least, in the bottom right, we have our filter. Now the filters on Tribute are quite powerful. There are quite a lot to choose from as well. If I turn on filter 1 right here, you can see that filter 1 is set up to filter oscillators, oscillator 1 and 2's output. We can also enable the serial button, which will make it so that filter 1's output is routed to filter 2's input. So right now I can use both of these filters in sequence. If serial is not checked, then filter 1's output is going directly out the master, and filter 2 does the same, so we have a parallel routing. Notice that we still need to enable oscillator 1 to filter 2 or oscillator 2 to filter 2 for filter 2 actually to filter anything in this setup. Let's take a listen to some of the filter types that Tribute comes with. So as you can see, I really took care to include some really radical slopes in this filter. The 96 dB filter slope is quite drastic and is also quite computationally heavy, even though it's so pretty well optimized that it won't actually show up in the DSP unless you have a bunch of tributes doing 96 decibel fall-off filtering. But with resonance on such a radical slope, you get some really defined resonances. Now, this is not the type of filter I would apply to this kind of bass patch. Here I would rather go for something like a multi-notch. So these are actually all-pass filters in sequence like you would find in a phaser. But if you route them together and add some feedback, you get these very nice multi-notch filters. And those have a very characteristic sound that's very nice on these kind of high harmonic bass patches. We also have the same thing inverted. Like if I use a few less bands, we can actually even emulate formant filters. Then there's comb filters as well, obviously, which you can use for that metallic sound. And then there are a couple of expressive filters, which are custom-made frequency responses that make use of many different filter types to create some quite interesting textures. Like this one. So really just have a play around with these filters and find your favorites. All of the normal filter modes also have a couple of multi-mode filters that you can use right here. For example, if you use a bandpass high-pass combination, you can use the spread down here to move a bandpass below in the cut band. Again, for a bit more expressiveness. All of the filters can also be mixed in and out and synced to the notes that you play with the keyboard track button. And that's pretty much all there is on the front panel of Tribute. On the back, we have audio out, CV in and CV outs, 1 through 4, which are accessible in the mod matrix. So you can just pull them in like this, CV in, and you can also send them back out like this. And then there is Node and Gate CV for your monophonic arpeggiator or matrix pattern sequencer, if you're still using this, even though there are players around. But they can be pretty fun for different applications. And that's pretty much all there is to Tribute. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you try Tribute out. You can try it out for free for 30 days. Make up your mind before you hopefully buy it. Thank you so much for your attention and have a great day, everybody. See you next time. Bye-bye.